Okay. Okay, so today what I wanted to talk about is just like some health. We talked last week, like maybe just go over some, I don't want to say myths, but like kind of some ideas about health that could be controversial or may not know if it's healthy or not. So I just picked a couple that we can go over. And so one of the ones that I get a lot from my patients and friends is chicken. And so meat in general, it's not the best for your health. But again, I try not to label foods as like good or bad, because meat in general, we overeat it. We overeat not the best quality of it, which makes it bad. We cook it in ways that create cancer promoting compounds, which are not good. Again, quality. But in and of itself, I don't want to say it's bad, because some people really need meat, you know? I mean, I know for myself, in college, I was vegetarian just because I didn't like the idea of eating animals. But then I found a point where I kind of needed it just a little bit, because I would get kind of weak and tired. And just a little bit would kind of like get me back going. And I didn't really crave it. So I would just, and I would make sure, and still do, if I eat meat, make sure it's a good quality. So, but with that, there's different levels of meat. So I guess I shouldn't say chicken, I should just say meat in general. But chicken has this, they have really good marketing. And the idea of this white meat being the healthiest meat, like I said, they have great lobbyists that promote the white meat as being healthy. And in fact, it's probably one of the worst. And so there's several reasons. So it's full of AGEs, which are advanced glycation compounds, these end products. So glycation is basically sugar. So like that's sort of what they're looking at when they test for diabetes, is if you have these glycation molecules. And it's basically like gumming up the receptors. And so glycation, any kind of glycation product, it promotes aging, promotes inflammation. So you want to avoid anything that's going to create that glycation, the AGEs, advanced glycation end products. So, and they also become toxic in your body as well. So chicken is full of AGEs. So there's that. So it's, so the other thing that it does, these AGEs, is it causes the tissue to stiffen. So it can promote cardiovascular disease, oxidative stress, inflammation. The other thing is higher meat consumption has been linked to colon cancer, increased risk of colon cancer. But white meat triples your risk. So, yeah, it's interesting. And there's also a link between eating chicken and pancreatic cancer and liver cancer. And it might be because there's these viruses in the chicken, which is why they have to give them, you know, all those medications and antibiotics and all that stuff, because of these illnesses that and you know, there's that whole bird flu thing going on right now. And so there's some question is, can it cross into us somehow by eating it? And they've found that it, again, affects the pancreas and the liver. So specifically, they found a 72% increased risk of pancreatic cancer for every 50 grams of chicken consumed daily. And then hopefully eating chicken nuggets, but 14 chicken nuggets a day will triple your rate of fatty liver compared to 7 chicken nuggets. Chicken has also been associated with increased risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a cancer. All grades of follicular lymphoma and B-cell lymphomas. And again, every 50 grams of poultry, not just chicken, poultry consumed daily, there's a 56 to 280% increased risk. It's a lot. So it's like sometimes when you think about these cancers, I mean, that's the hard part, is like, how do you trace back what caused it? And again, it's usually not one thing, right? It's like you're combining all these things together. But then you think about how ubiquitous chicken is and how many people eat chicken, add chicken to every meal, thinking that chicken is healthy. Even if you're not eating chicken nuggets, which is a whole other thing. I don't even really consider that food, but even if I know a lot of people that are eating chicken thinking that it's healthy, and even buying organic chicken, and how much of that chicken. So again, combine that with products that you're using that are toxic, not eating enough vegetables, being deficient in antioxidants, all of those things combined, you're tipping your body to like a disease process. So then we get into salmonella. Chicken is like the #1 reservoir for salmonella, which is like one of the top 5 most deadly bacteria. And it's really hard to cook salmonella out, if at all. So what's interesting is in Europe, it's illegal to sell contaminated chicken with salmonella, but it's not in the US. Why? Well, again, it goes back to the great lobbying and marketing that the chicken industry has. They work really, really hard to promote how good chicken is for you. It's kind of like the beef industry is strong too. But what's interesting is it's illegal to sell E. coli contaminated beef here in the US, but it's not illegal to sell salmonella contaminated chicken in the US. And salmonella is more deadly than E. coli. It's just something to chew on. So yeah, and then they did a study in 2014, and they found 97% of chicken breasts sold in stores were contaminated with bacteria that can make people sick. 38% was a strain of salmonella that was resistant to antibiotics. So just because something's sold in the store doesn't mean that it's safe. Yeah. And then they can use a lot of marketing jargon as well, like all natural. So the other part of it is salt. So companies inject the chicken breast with salt water. And the reason they do this is, 1, it makes it tastier because everyone eats salt. 2, and one of the main reasons, is because it weighs more. And they sell by weight, right? It's sold by the pound. So when you inject salt water, it makes it heavier so they can make more money. It makes it tastier, and it can still be labeled as all natural. They don't have to disclose that. And how much salt is injected, they don't have to disclose. So they've done some studies and found that a single chicken breast can have up to a whole day's worth of sodium in one chicken breast, which for maybe you and I may not be that big of a deal, but for somebody with heart disease or on medications or with high blood pressure and trying to control it, that can put them totally out of whack. So I have a lot of patients that are like, sometimes my blood pressure spikes, and I don't know why. And it could be what you're eating, especially chicken, because again, you think you're being healthy, you're eating chicken, and even if you're not adding salt, there could be salt water injected into that chicken breast. That is not good for your heart. Chicken's also linked to UTI infections, which they found comes from the rectum, from when you're ingesting it. And the other interesting thing is chickens 100 years ago, this might not be surprising, are nothing like the chickens of today. So chickens 100 years ago had about 16 fat calories per serving, 16. Today, about 200. And that's because they're like Frankenstein chickens. They're all breasts. They're all like these big, huge chickens. Where chickens are usually, especially here in Hawaii, like we see little scrawny chickens running around, but the chickens that are bred to be eaten are much bigger. And that's, again, taking the skin off, all of that. That's in the meat. You can take the skin off, doesn't matter. All that fat is still there. And it's found to be more so than eating steak, like as far as the fat content. Interestingly, chicken has more sodium than beef, has more sodium than a large McDonald's French fry, has more sodium than salted pretzels. So again, it's just sort of like changing our mindset of what we're eating and putting in our body, thinking we know, which again, 100 years ago, that wouldn't be the case, but it's different now. The other thing is chicken meat is often injected with phosphates. And what that does is it also helps it weigh more, so they can make more money. It also, it improves the color of the breast, the chicken breast. But what happens is these phosphates, they have a delicate balance with other minerals. And so too much of those are stressful on your kidneys. They're vascular toxins. So they're affecting the blood vessels and the arteries and how they function, which also goes back to the people with high blood pressure. It's irritating the lining of your vessels. So if you already, again, it's like this cumulative effect, putting you over the edge. Oh, and it also promotes bacterial infection. So it's making you more prone to bacterial infection. And then you're already adding in salmonella, which is like one of the most deadly bacterial. And companies don't have to disclose. So it can be injected with phosphates. And again, it could be all natural. So yeah, so those are kind of my main points with chicken. And then I wanted to go on, I just wanted to keep it short and sweet, but the other one I wanted to mention was salt. So it's a good segue going in with the salt on the chicken.
Nancy, can I ask you a question real quick, or should we wait till the end?
No, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you before you move on to the salt.
Yeah.
What about the chicken that they sell like at Whole Foods that's organic?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Or any health food store that they say it's organic.
So organic just means it doesn't have pesticides.
But the other things that you mentioned, it still does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we don't know. They don't have to label it. But being organic doesn't mean that it does not have those things. All it means is it doesn't have the pesticides and herbicides in it, which is usually in their feed that they're
Right.
But they can still inject the chicken breasts with sodium and phosphate. Yeah, that's the tricky thing. All of that is just considered minerals, sodium and phosphates, which, is natural. So they don't have to disclose that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's tricky. So then salt, there's a difference between salt and sodium. So sodium is an essential mineral in our bodies. It's an electrolyte. It helps muscle function, nerve function, helps maintain our fluid balance. Salt is 40% sodium and 60% chloride. So it's a combination of sodium and chloride, another essential mineral. So one of the problems is salt can actually irritate the lining of the arteries. So it used to be used to preserve food. So we used to salt like fish, you know, so it didn't have to be refrigerated and you could keep it for a long time outside of the cold and it wouldn't go bad. Salt wasn't eaten very much other than that. There's trace amounts in vegetables. But again, like now we're using more and more salt because it is a preservative. So it's mostly found in processed foods. So anything in a box, a can, a bag, because it's a preservative, because it helps preserve the food and it's cheap. So again, salt gets a bad name, but sodium, again, is an essential mineral that we can end up deficient in if we don't have it in quality. So if all your salt if all your sodium is coming from salt, it's usually from processed foods. And that salt that is used in processed foods has been heated. It's like kiln dried. And so whenever, like, goes back to our first conversation about enzymes, whenever you're heating something, you're destroying all those live enzymes that are beneficial. So that's why, like, Celtic sea salt, salt from the sea that still has all those minerals in it, are going to be beneficial. You're going to get trace minerals in, say, a Celtic sea salt, a Himalayan sea salt, that you're not going to get from like an iodized table salt, or which is what is used in processed foods to not only preserve it, but to make it taste good. But the nice thing is it takes about 2 weeks. There's an alliesthetic response for taste buds. So the more salt we eat, the more we need, because we get used to that taste. And then you eat something without salt and it tastes very bland. Well, that takes about 2 weeks. And if you cut it out, everything's going to taste super bland. But then at the end of that 2 weeks, you go back to what you ate and it's going to taste super salty. That's because of that alliesthetic taste change. Also with sugar, sugar does the same thing. You might get used to sweet, 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 and then you cut out sugar and then you go back to that and all of a sudden super sweet. You're like, oh my God, this is so sweet. But it takes about 2 weeks. And then going back, 3/4 of our salt intake generally is from processed foods, not a salt shaker. So the best way to get rid of extra salt in your diet is just to cut out the processed foods. So if you're cutting out the processed foods, then you can add in those mineralized salts, those Celtic sea salts, those with all the minerals, the Himalayan sea salt, smaller amounts, right? You're not going to use very much because it's just going to be maybe with something like that. So, and again, the salt industry has their own.
There's a lot of background noise.
It was quite a gathering of people.
Yeah, there we
There
go.
we go. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, and then salt, like if you think about salt too, makes you thirsty. So that's the other thing, is it's really good for like, if you go to a bar and they've got salty pretzels, you know, you're going to drink more beer. And so salt is also a way to promote eating more food, drinking more, all of that. So, yeah, so, but it's hard because at least in the industry that I'm in, they tell people mostly to avoid salt, which is partially true. But again, the sodium, the essential mineral of sodium, is also so important for our fluid balance of our cells. It's just we want to get the good quality sodium that's not from salt, that difference between sodium and salt. So I don't know, how does that make sense? I know we had some people come on a little later, so but yeah. Any thoughts on that? But if you have high blood pressure or any kind of heart problems, you do want to minimize your salt. But it is okay to use a little bit of Celtic sea salt. So the Celtic sea salt is going to be kind of moist. It's going to look wet. It's like kind of a gray salt. And it's actually nice to put just a tiny pinch, couple crystals in your water when you drink your water, because the salt, again, helps the water balance in our cells and the nerve impulses. So it's really important to have the sodium in our bodies. So putting a little tiny bit in your water, a good quality salt, will actually help you absorb your water better and get it into the cells, because there's people that drink tons of water and they're not getting hydrated. That water is not getting into the cell. It's just sitting in your stomach and then you're peeing it out. So adding some little pinch of good salt, not iodized salt, not kiln dried salt, but that wet salt that has all those trace minerals in it, all that stuff from the sea, is going to be beneficial for your cells because of the minerals in it, the trace minerals in there. You guys use salt?
Oh, can you hear me? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just use the gray salt as well, like the wet salt.
Yeah.
Sometimes I use the little black volcanic salt
Mm-hmm.
because I do love that on like cucumbers as a
Yeah.
snack for the kids. I make them like a snack of cucumbers with a little bit of the volcanic. So I don't know what the difference is between the volcanic, the pink, the Himalayan. So you're saying the Himalayan, even the Himalayan isn't great, or?
No, the Himalayan's all right. The Himalayan's good. Like the pink rock salt Himalayan. Yeah. You just don't want that heated, dried. It goes back to our other conversation about the enzymes. You don't want anything high heat that's going to kill the natural enzymes in the salt. So you want that, like, you know, when you go to the ocean, like, you know, where they make the salt and it's dried in the sun. So just make sure, like for that volcanic salt, that it's like sun dried and not heated, like processed, you know.
Well, I bought it in Hawaii, but who knows?
Yeah, might be a good chance that it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's usually like smaller plant. We don't really have big processing plants here, unless it's like made on the mainland, you know.
Also,
You have to be careful.
you
like,
have
oh,
any
yeah.
information? Do you have that information written down as far as like the chicken? Like, is there kind of like a printout or something that it's funny because we're about to have chicken for dinner. I'm like, no, I really don't want to have chicken after hearing all that. Well, you always told me, but I don't eat it very often. But I mean, unless it's going to be the chickens from my mom's yard, which obviously she's not going to have the heart to kill one of those chickens.
So what are you looking for? Where to find?
So like all the statistics about chicken and how like you're how many times more likely to develop pancreatic cancer, liver, all that kind of information? Is that in like a certain, or do you have like a?
Well, those are from studies. I can
Mhm.
pull the studies. But yeah,
I'd
this
like
is,
to show that to Art tonight
oh,
because I don't love chicken, but he loves chicken, and so I usually get for me beef over chicken, but yeah.
yeah, yes. So, and it's not just him, most people do. Most chicken is like, and it's curious because I wonder how many people would love chicken if they didn't have the PR behind it, you know, because chicken's really promoted as this healthy white meat, you know? And so I think it's just sort of somewhere in the back of people's heads that it's like this healthy thing to eat. But I wonder if like people just ate it on its own without knowing or thinking it's healthy and would actually like it and enjoy it. I'd just be curious because chicken doesn't actually have that much taste, you know? It's usually like the sauce and everything that you're cooking it in. But yeah, what's interesting too is because like beef got a bad rap for a while, but beef can actually be more nutritious. It's got a lot more in it than chicken. And again, chicken triples your risk of colon cancer versus beef, which only doubles it, which is still, but again, it's how you cook it. And the other big thing with the chicken, beyond the sodium, is also all the bacteria and the viruses that chickens can get, you know, and especially now with all that bird flu going on, you know, and knowing that in the US, they don't, it's not illegal, you know, or if you're in Europe, they legally cannot sell contaminated chicken, unlike here. So you just have to be really, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Like you go to France and the chickens are so much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. As they should be. I mean, that's how chickens are, right? I mean,
Yeah. So I
So-
wonder if Europe has that same, like if it's still unsafe to eat, like if you're in Europe, chicken as opposed to here. I guess you'd have to know all the,
yeah.
I know they have much stricter laws when it comes to, you know, food and
Yeah. I don't know,
chemicals.
I mean, it would be healthier in the sense of like, they wouldn't have all that contamination. But yeah, again, yeah, I'd be curious, like stripping all that away, the health benefits or disadvantages of chicken without all those things, you know, without the salmonella and the phosphates and
Right.
sodium and all of that. Yeah. You may never know. But yeah, I have some studies. I could send those to you, but this is like basically just compilation of stuff from my years of talking to patients, because it's like my head's always exploding when like, oh, I'm trying to help my health. What are you doing? Oh, I eat chicken every day. I'm like, ah, like that's not good. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah. So, Emily,
So
are you vegetarian? You eat chicken?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't eat chicken.
Okay.
I stopped eating chicken.
Lost her.
Mhm.
And then Patricia, are you, I don't know if you're there, but.
Oh, no, I'm totally there. I apologize. I had a major client meltdown and it went on and on and on and on.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I thought, oh my God, I need to log in. Maybe you're still there. Don't eat very much chicken, but I'm horrified with what you're saying.
Well, good. Yeah, that's like one of the things that I make sure my patients don't eat is chicken. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And yet you're right about the promo. So I'm in Canada. I don't know whether our regulations are the same,
Yeah.
and I'm going to keep my video off because my internet is unstable. We're having
Okay, no
storms.
worries. No
Yeah.
worries. Yeah.
But I'm a cancer survivor. I had two different kinds of breast cancer and diagnosed in 2013. Absolutely clear. Intend to stay that way. So
Yeah,
I don't want to don't want to do anything that's going to
yeah,
threaten that. You know.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing is chickens have a lot of weird little viruses that seem, we don't know for sure, but seem to transmit to people. And whether it's from eating, there are some other interesting studies too that have shown even if you're not eating the chicken and you're just handling it, it still gets into you. They've seen it like seed inside your body. So
Gross.
just like
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that it's like we don't really know, and better to just avoid it because it's not like it's got these great health benefits. So why even?
Well, the hype is it's much better than beef. When I was diagnosed, the first thing I did, before actually I was officially diagnosed because they were doing 2 biopsies. So I figured, okay, probably have this, and yeah, I'll wait for the report. But I went to my holistic nutritionist, and at that time, she was saying, so don't, you can't really have beef. And I said, I really love fillets. Can I have it
Yeah,
once a week? And so we've kept up with that pretty much.
yeah,
I do vegetarian burgers and just to
yeah,
have a quick meal sometimes, but I
yeah.
don't know.
And that's
It's
why, because especially in cardiology, veganism is really pushed as sort of the best diet. And I mean, it's great, but people forget veganism is also McDonald's French fries and a lot of processed foods, uh,
yes,
and a lot of processed meat-like products as well. And so you can be vegan
yeah,
and not eat very much actual real food. So I get it's hard because these diet labels can get real misleading real quickly. Even like keto gets a lot of press, and keto is great for like brain issues, things like that. But the key with keto is you're in ketosis. And
mm,
many people aren't even checking if they're in ketosis, which is the whole point of eating keto, to make sure you're burning fats and not sugars. That's the
right.
process of ketosis. And so, beef gets demonized. And again, it's because we always seem to do things in extremes. And yeah, you don't want to eat a ton of beef and you don't want to eat, high heated meat products. But at the same time, there's quite a few people that really thrive having a little bit of beef in their diet. And I should also say lamb. So beef and lamb are kind of the two meats that I eat. I don't eat any poultry. I rarely, if ever, eat pork.
So, and with chicken, obviously the relationship, what about eggs? I'm
Yeah,
sorry I missed it earlier. I really am.
I didn't talk about eggs. Eggs is another one that's really interesting. Eggs, man, it's like the camps of pro and against. There's a lot of studies that are very negative against eggs. But again, there's people that thrive on eggs. So eggs is also one of those that some people have a real hard time. Their bodies just, there's a lot of allergies to the albumin and components in the eggs. So those people definitely should avoid it. But usually you can tell if you eat an egg how you feel. And some people just don't feel good or they have problems. And then other people, an egg is so nourishing for them, especially the yolk. You have to eat the yolk as well. That's where all the goodies are. But yeah, so for me, I just leave eggs up to you. Like, how do you feel? I mean, of course, everything in moderation, but eggs, I don't eat a ton of eggs, but I know when I do, it's like my body needs it. There's something in it, maybe it's full of NAC, N-acetylcysteine, which is really nourishing for the body. So,
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whether you went through and asked people why they were interested in what you were doing, but um, I have spiking blood pressure, and it's something my mother had that they couldn't figure out. So I'm just so happy to know about what you're doing. I really am.
Oh, interesting. So do you
Mm.
have any pattern to the spike, or have you found any pattern to the spike?
No, there doesn't seem to be a pattern.
Day, night,
No,
no particular
it's
foods?
it's so weird. It's a little bit weird. We've just done some tests. So my doctor was on it, thank God. But I went to emergency after a little bit of a dizzy spell, and my blood pressure was up first at 170 over something. I was so shocked when they said 170. I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
And then after 3 hours of rest, it went up to 184 over 90.
Hmm.
So because they put me in the wrong area, our local emerge is not good. So it is unpredictable. It's something weird that is
Interesting.
going
And
on.
how long does it last?
It depends. I can now feel, I pay attention now, and so my heart races, which is not a great thing at the same time. So it's a few minutes. It's not forever.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
watched my mother go through the same thing. She had a Holter monitor on, and we went to the specialist to get the results and have it removed. And she had an episode right there in front of us, and it was just a real spike. It lasted about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and then it was normal again.
So
It's weird.
it's the blood pressure and the heart rate?
Seems to be for me. Yeah.
Okay, because the Holter is just going to monitor your heart rate.
You know, they were trying to decide whether she was having a stroke or having something to do with her heart. It was like, I don't know,
Hmm.
not conclusive. So anyway, what you're doing is fantastic. Sorry to
And then have you tried to like create like a food diary and see like if certain things you're eating are correlating in any way to your blood?
No, but I've thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been really busy, and I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the excuse, right? But you're right. I think that
Because
makes sense.
there could be something in what you're eating that is triggering it as well.
It can be any time. It really can. It's weird.
Yeah,
And I don't want it. So
yeah, right.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
I also wonder if you want to meet. There's a woman that I was in a group with. Her name is Lori Courage, and she does alternative food cooking. I wonder if that's something that you care about. If you don't, that's fine. You're probably busy doing your own thing. But she might be a good ally for getting
Yeah.
recipes together and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And if you like, I will.
meeting
Sure.
of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we'll stop hogging the stage. I apologize, everyone.
No. It's good. Yeah, when I started, I said, because last week we went on for like an hour and a half on supplements and got, my whole point of doing this was to try and keep it light, 20 to 30 minutes, and answer some questions. And it seems like I get so deep into this stuff. And then also I gotta take my husband to the airport in about 40 minutes. So yeah, but I'm happy to like talk more and answer questions. And I know some of you came on later, but yeah, I just wanted to, some of these health myths. I also was going to talk about protein and sugar, but I figured those are like whole talks in and of themselves, especially protein, well, and sugar. I mean, because again, everyone is so focused on getting enough protein. And what's interesting to me is like, we all have so much protein in our diet, but we're like completely missing all the trace minerals and live enzymes and all these other things in our diet. And why are we focused on getting those, which is what creates life? If anything, we're protein, we have too much protein. That's one thing we're not missing in our diets, and it can be really heavy on the kidneys. And then same thing with sugar. We're trying to get sugar out of our diet, but it's like fruit, which is one of the most healing foods that you can eat, is avoided because of the sugar, but yet it's so high in methionine, which is like, protects your DNA. And anyway, so maybe those could be whole other talks in and of themselves. But any recommendations for future talks or questions? Yeah.
Nancy, can we talk a little bit about fish? I know we kind of talked about that at the end last week. Because I do like to eat fish. I mean, I do like to eat fish,
Yeah.
and we're told fish a few days a week, or, you know,
Well,
farm raised versus wild caught. Which ones should we stay away from because of the mercury, so
Yeah.
forth. So
Yeah.
that could get a little bit confusing too.
Yeah, fish is another one for, I mean, I feel like everything we eat is just so, gets so complicated and stuff. But yeah, fish, generally, the bigger the fish, again, the bigger the fish is gonna eat bigger things which have more contaminants in it. And they live longer, so they have more time for more contaminants. But again, everything has, so it's not to say, again, it's like going back to, I don't want to say tuna is bad, you know, because tuna's got great things in it. So the thing for me is like, so it's the mercury, right? When it comes down to it, it's like the mercury and the toxins in these larger fish that are accumulating in the flesh that you're eating. So whenever I eat fish, like bigger fish, I always eat chlorella tablets. So you can get these like little tablets of chlorella, which is basically just like chlorophyll, which is known to pull mercury from your system and eliminate it. So whenever I eat fish, I don't avoid it, but whenever I eat tuna, I take chlorella tablets. I kind of take chlorella tablets anyway, but especially if I'm eating poke or something like that with tuna. Now, smaller fishes like sardines and stuff, they're not around as long. They don't have as much toxins in their system. Now, all these fish have great fatty acids in them, which is good for our brain and our body. So, and not only the brain, but what we forget about is the cell membrane. The cell membrane, which is the skin of the cell. The skin of the cell is how cells communicate to each other. So it's really important to have integrity of those cell membranes so that you can communicate between your cells to have things work seamlessly, so that communication is happening in your body, so that you're functioning well. So, and fatty acids help protect those cell membranes. And again, this is unrelated somewhat, but also cholesterol. So cholesterol is another one that gets demonized, but our entire brain, and again, our cell membrane is made of those fatty acids, which is using the cholesterol. So when we're on all these cholesterol decreasing drugs, it's like an antibiotic. It doesn't just kill the bad bacteria, it kills all the bacteria. Same with the statin. It doesn't just get rid of the bad cholesterol, it gets rid of all cholesterol. And what happens is when your levels get too low, then you get the brain issues, the brain fog. You can get, you know, all kinds of problems. So, yeah, but because again, the problem isn't the cholesterol, it's the cholesterol oxidizing. That's the problem. So the idea is you want to prevent the oxidation of your cholesterol, because our bodies make cholesterol. Cholesterol is like, we need it, right? So you don't want to get rid of it. You just want to prevent it from oxidizing. That's the problem. That's what LDL cholesterol is, more easily oxidized. So when you have too much of it, you're basically like, have a powder keg, you know, that could potentially become toxic in your body. So anyway, we got a little off topic with your fish. Did that answer kind of?
So little tiny fish and young fish.
Yeah, yeah. I love sardines. I know some people don't, but I love sardines.
They're kind of salty.
They
Yeah.
can be. They can be. Yeah. If you get them in, yeah. You gotta look on the label and make sure there's no added stuff on it.
Same thing, I guess, with anchovies.
Yeah. I like anchovies too.
Cannot do Caesar salad without anchovies. I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody says.
I know. And I love just taking a fresh head of cabbage, like the white cabbage, chop it up, get a little bit of sesame oil and mix in some anchovies, like make it a paste and put it on the cabbage. Oh, so good. It's like a Japanese dish. It's like a traditional Japanese, but sesame seed oil is really good for the heart. Really heal sesame seeds in general, and the sesame seed oil is really good for the heart. So, and then cabbage is really neutralizing of any kind of cancer compounds. So adding those two. So I always tell people, if you're going to have meat or any kind of meat products, or sausage or like some kind of carcinogenic meat, that's got, all those cancer causing compounds, eat it with some cabbage, because like barbecue used to be eaten with coleslaw.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
that's why, like in Japan, they're eating a lot of those, meat skewers and, a lot of fried meats and stuff, but they're eating it with cabbage, this sesame cabbage with the anchovies. So it's interesting when you look traditionally how we used to eat some of these things, and now we've gotten rid of all the cabbage and just sticking with the meats. So, and that's why I always say, keep your diet, your traditional diet, because that is so important. But if you add in these things to help kind of neutralize, because you can't just eat like, you got to live, right? And you want to keep your culture too, which is, I think, really important, because what's happened is a lot of these cultures are like, well, I can't eat this. I got to eat this Mediterranean diet, especially out here, we got a lot of Japanese, Okinawans, and, and Hawaiians, obviously. And, they're eating Kahlua pork, things like that. But the pigs are being caught in the mountains. They're eating mangoes off the ground. That is much more different than pork from the store. And then again, balancing it with other foods that are going to offset anything that's damaging. So
That's a good reminder. That's really great, because my husband currently has cancer, so we need to, we need to be
what
careful.
kind?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
He doesn't eat chicken.
No, well, not anymore.
Oh, yeah.
We ate very, very little of it. It's
Oh,
funny.
okay. Yeah, because I was gonna say, it's I think I talked about earlier, it's chicken is a huge risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
up to 280% increased risk.
What? Why do people not know this stuff? Man, this is amazing.
They have a great lobbying PR company. They have
Wow.
so many lobbyists. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
Really?
this is a gift. You are a gift to society, my friend.
I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure.
Not to
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, here.
You're back to chicken for a minute. Chickens are basically scavengers, and it's amazing what they can eat. And I've never seen an animal eat what a chicken does,
But it would be interesting to see, like, do studies on wild chicken versus like factory farm chicken, maybe there'd be different. I don't know, be curious. I mean, they still have salmonella, but yeah, it's interesting.
That's why there's no chicken sushi.
Yeah, right.
Aren't we lucky, because they could have sold us that one too. This is a great product.
That's funny. Yeah, no, you don't want to have any, no chicken sashimi, no chicken tartare for sure. You don't get that's why they don't ask how you want your chicken cooked.
Yeah.
It's always well done.
Doesn't sound like it would make that much difference, actually.
Yeah, right, I know. Well, cool. So we're at 4 o'clock. What anything else, you guys, well, any last questions or anything you think for next week or coming up that you would like to get into? Any
This is
help?
interesting.
What's that?
This is real interesting. How we just get into this stuff, so it's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
I really like you going down the path of using supplements or foods that will counteract things that we can't help but absorb into our bodies. And like as you were saying with the chlorella tablets, like my friend who was going through chemo was taking chlorella tablets to absorb the radiation
Yes.
she was receiving. Or, you know, when I'm giving, like, kids love mac and cheese, right? And I'm like, ugh, you know, it's so bad. I try to make the regular stuff like, I mean, my own, and then they're like, we want, you know, even the Annie's or whatever that says it's like healthy, it's not. I mean, anything in a powder is not great. But
And
every
it's
now and
orange.
then, yeah, and you know, every now and then I'll just let them. So I'm just trying to think like things that I can counteract
Yes.
that kind of thing. You know, kids at school, like just yeah, so things that I can add into the diet that will balance out the
Right.
bad. I mean, aside with from obviously, you know, green vegetables, like, but what specific ones?
Yeah.
That sounds actually amazing because we have to eat. And there are some times like right now, building a business again and taking on some of the, or a lot of the household things. Thank God for the little robot vacuum cleaner. I have
Yeah,
to say
right.
that is a bonus for my entire life.
I know, I love those too. It's great.
We call him Little Rob. My husband he's retired, so he used to do all the housework, but he's
That's
not
funny. I
in
call mine
totally
Robbie.
great shape. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Robbie.
That's a great idea, though, the things you can take to offset. And I didn't know cabbage was so good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's actually good too, because it kind of goes to my reset that I'm going to launch next week, which kind of goes into that. So, yeah, how to incorporate into your everyday so that you can keep everything afloat. Because again, it's like, I mean, I live out here and I try and like, eat tropical fruits and smoothies all the time, but it's like, you know, when I go to the mainland, I gotta have a burrito. I gotta have, you know, it's like, you know, it's life, and you can't beat yourself up about it, but you have to learn how to incorporate certain things so that you can make sure your body, you know, your body's resilient. You just have to give it what it needs so that it can do what it knows how to do, you know, and you're always going to have toxins and stuff in there. So,
Well,
okay.
and then we're likely to have more. And that, I think the thing that, every time you try and put in a new habit, if you think about some of the early modules that we were doing, for example, how are you going to, and you've got to try and figure out how to stack habits, make
Mhm.
them stick. How do you talk kids into macaroni and cheese? I actually make my own, but
Yeah.
rice, pasta, and things like that. But we're adults eating it, and so it's a little easier. So
Yeah.
how do you maintain that so that you can live better and live longer?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Especially
That
for
would be cool.
I mean, geez, I feel like their food system now is so different than like when we
Oh,
were,
yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
I mean, we
And I
have a
think,
problem, but we had decades of cleaner food that we had
right.
access to, and oh gosh,
Have you been eating cleaner food all these decades or no? Did you grow up on McDonald's or what'd you grow up on?
no, but I wasn't allowed. My parents never bought soda and
No, we didn't either. My
that.
kids were not raised like that.
Yeah, but like, but you know, once I went to college,
Oh, yeah, there's that.
But I just feel like kids now, like, because even fast food and soda was different when I was growing up. There wasn't the high fructose corn syrup in soda. You know what I mean? So even though it wasn't good, it still was better than today, So it's
And the amount of instant is disturbing, right? And it's grown more and more and more.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty scary.
it is.
It's funny, it's sugar does less damage to your body than either corn syrups, the fake sugar sweeteners they do. It's-
Yeah, well, the fake sugars aren't even, I don't consider those food. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like, those aren't actual sugars. Those are like lab made chemicals made
yeah.
by your brain to
Right.
think that it's sweet. So yeah. And
Right.
and again, it's like, you look at cocaine when you have the coca plant and the farmers are chewing the coca plant for energy, but they're not becoming addicts, as opposed to when you extract the cocaine from the plant and use it. That's a whole different substance. And it's the same with sugar, when you're extracting the sugar from the sugar cane, now it's having a whole different process in your body and your brain, So it's that extraction process that becomes dangerous. But if you're eating sugars that are in fruits and in a natural form, same with like a coca plant, you know what I mean? It's like people have used that for centuries and,
Yeah, the composition isn't manipulated.
exactly.
Right.
Mhm. Yes.
Which dates are just like, now you've taught me, Nancy. Dates are like my new favorite thing. I mean, I made Tati a chocolate cake, I think I told you, and I used cacao powder, and actually I used honey instead of the dates, but I used honey, cacao powder, eggs, salt, and it was and honey, and it
Mhm.
was so delicious. Oh, and it was cacao powder. It was so good.
Wow. No flour?
I'm sorry, the flour was, I think was it almond flour? I can't remember. It was what kind of flour it was. I have to remember what I got. And then I also found now this tiger nut flour.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
Ooh,
Oh,
that
I
sounds
think that's what
interesting.
it was. It was the tiger nut flour, actually, which is really expensive. It was like $15 for a small bag. And I was
Yeah,
like,
no
oh my
kidding.
God. But it's good for you, and it's got fiber and the
Yeah.
cacao that has all the magnesium in it,
Yeah.
and niacin, and just all the good things that are not gonna, and another thing I've been trying to get her off of is fruit juice. I mean, fruit juice is terrible.
No.
Yes, it really is. And we all gave our little ones fruit juice years and
Yeah.
years ago because it
And
was better than soda.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what I wonder? I wonder honey versus maple syrup. In Canada, we have a whole lot of, at least in my area, we're covered in snow outright right now, and it's just the sap is starting to run. So it's,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what one of the things my holistic nutritionist told me, and it was 2013. No, you can have a tiny bit of maple syrup. You cannot have sugar because cancer and sugar, right?
Ah, well, and that's what
Um,
my recipe was. Either I could use maple syrup or honey.
right now, I don't have as much trust that what I thought and what we all thought then was the same as what we know now, or what,
Yeah. Well, honey is actually a food. So it is a sweetener, but honey has like a ton of antioxidants and properties in it that are
right.
healing in and of itself. So I always recommend honey, of course, a raw honey, not heated.
Right.
But yeah, and maple syrup as well has, enzymes and
Although
properties.
it's heated, right? You have to boil it, so you reduce it. When that's part of it's sap that's boiled to bring it down to the
I
syrup.
think if you can get it so that it's not high heat.
Ah,
But I
interesting.
don't know, I'm not as familiar, to be honest, with maple syrup processing.
My neighbor has tapped our trees. We are in the country. Has tapped his own trees. He's a dentist, but he loves maple syrup, and he's tapped his own trees and our trees, and he
That's great.
generally gifts us a bottle. But I,
Is I would think is anything like that too, like you've got all the mana, like the mana is like the energy of, you know, from the tree on your property, and you're
right.
getting all that terroir, you know, that like properties of that place, you know what I mean?
Yep, no, I'm hearing you. I guess we need to give more thought to that, really, to all of the aspects of how we're eating.
Because it's like we study all the like chemical components of stuff, but it's like there's something to, you know, it's like like with wine and grapes, like we're
Right.
always looking at, you know, where the grapes from, and all of that contributes to the flavor. But it's like same with food, you know, I mean, wine is from grapes, which is a food, but it's like I would think having that property of the maple syrup from, you know, pulling it from the tree and then however you're processing it, like, I don't know. It's
I'll
really-
ask him how he processes it. I have friends who are doing it on their property as well, but I know that they have to babysit it for 24 hours or something. You don't take your eyes off it, because if it goes too far, then it's not good. I don't know. It's a complex thing. I'll find out from him.
Yeah. I'd be curious.
Hmm.
Cool.
Me too. Do you have to go and drive your husband to the airport?
Yeah, I gotta leave. And
Just, it might not be good if you missed
oh, he'll let me know. But
it.
yeah. Yeah, so I'll put something together, and yeah,
This
thanks
is
for your
cool. Yeah, this is really cool.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for
So
coming
glad.
too.
I'm sorry to be late. It just really
No.
was a day from hell.
I have
No.
one more question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Cabbage, red. So I made Dino some red cabbage a couple days ago. I think he liked it. But red cabbage as opposed to green green cabbage. There's a significant difference, right? So I mean, when you're cooking, when you're alternating the meat with the cabbage, it's the white cabbage, obviously. But I didn't think that had any nutrients in it like the red cabbage does.
Sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, because there's white foods. So, you know, when you think of the rainbow of foods and all the phytonutrients and all the foods, white is also has its own phytonutrients. So that's going to be like the cabbages and the mushrooms and, you know, the jicama and, you know, some root stuff that are white, cauliflower. The white is also has its own phytonutrients in it specific to that class. So it's not devoid of stuff. So for sure, white cabbage is, they're almost like astringent, you know, properties. They're same with like mushrooms, you know, they're gonna have that like sponge-like property. You know, they're really good at absorbing toxins and stuff. So
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, because you think of white as, oh, well, it's just not green enough. It's like having really white lettuce. Ew. There's no nutrients there. That's good to know.
Yeah,
Good
no, white
question.
sure is like very beneficial for sure. You want to get enough white foods in your diet.
Very cool.
And then
Well,
of course,
thank you.
purple has stuff as well, you know, it's different. Yeah.
I feel like I don't know anything about food anymore.
Oh God, that's how I feel too. And I've been studying this for decades. And they also
Thank you.
feels like they make it so complicated. It's like we get in, we talk about all these things, and it's like, I don't know. It is complicated. That's why I say, like, I study this all the time. I read this all the time. How is like a regular person supposed to know what to do? You know?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Called
Yeah,
marketing. It's called
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah, no
absolutely.
kidding.
Beat or whatever. Do a white, whatever. Just different colors. Who knows? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
like white wine. Nobody drinks. Nobody will like yellow wine, so they bleach it with baking soda to make it more wider so people would buy this stuff.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, wow.
Ay, ay, ay. Well, this was fun. Thank you all for joining and contributing and asking questions. It always helps me as well, and I love talking about this. So, yeah.
And
it
you're
keeps us
obviously good
straight.
at it.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I
Oh.
think you've changed my whole entire life now. I'm going to go and look in my cupboard. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks
Okay.
again. I'll see you guys next week.
Yay. Thank you,
Bye.
Nancy.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.